All right, I think we're live. Let's just double check. That's a good start. On YouTube. Let's see. Just make. All right. I believe we're live. Let's just go with it. So, what are we trying to do today? I There's a lot of things that I want to share, and there's never enough time. And if I want to do something like of high production value, I just don't tend to do it because there's never enough time. So I wanted to brainstorm with you live because why not? Just let's figure stuff out together. And the one thing I wanted to talk about today is when we talk about sales engineering, a lot of the things that we discuss are the customer facing activities in terms of like demos, POCs, that sort of thing. And we focus on the processes related to those. Some people have processes, some people just show up and do the job. I'm not saying either one is good or bad. It's just, it's better to have a process in place. But hey, as long as you're able to help the customer and help your salesperson, what do I care? Well, I do care. So today I wanted to talk about the idea of, I wanted to brainstorm with you because I wanted to create an ebook, kind of an ebook, where you can download it at some point if you choose to. And the goal I wanted to talk about, I wanted to discuss front end versus back end when it comes to sales engineering. It's a term probably most of you know. It's a term used, and by the way, whoever is online, please say hi so I know who you are. And I appreciate you being here at this time of day. So please feel free to say hello and let me know who you are, where you're from, what you do, and how can the session be beneficial to you. I hope this is a collaborative effort. So I have my thoughts, but I'd love to add your thoughts into the ebook if I ever end up writing it. So let's go from there. Now, here's the thing that I wanted to talk about. There is the concept of back end and front end when it comes to software engineer. Operation tech takeover. It's good to have you. And it's my pleasure. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to figure out like what's the back end and front end when it comes to sales engineering. So let's just define them quickly. Back end process. Basically, it's anything that doesn't, or anything that happens behind the scenes. That's the shortest definition that I can provide. And as they say, the best definition is the shortest one. Hey, Scott, it's good to have you. I appreciate you being here. I think it's like 7 p.m. your time. Let me know if I'm off. And then you have the front end process. And when you're talking about it in terms of a website, front end is what the customer sees. It's not the UI, but well, it's kind of, as far as I understand it, it is kind of the UI. The front end is 8 p.m. Okay, same time as here. I didn't know that. The front end is anything related to anything that's customer facing. Okay, so, and when we talk about processes, as I mentioned earlier, we talk about the front end, the customer facing stuff. So the demos, the POCs, and all that. But there's a lot of things that take place on the back end that are never discussed. And whether you work for a startup or for a large company, they may or may not have those for some reason. So if you're a startup, you should think about those. If you work for a big company, good luck. Hopefully, if your management, you can share this with the management team, and hopefully they can start building it. But let's start in terms of like, hey, this is what a sales cycle looks like. And again, I'm brainstorming, so I don't have anything planned. This can go in any direction. So if this is going in the direction you want it to go, great. Otherwise, let me know. So generally speaking, you have a lead coming in. I'm going to draw the entire sales cycle right now. So you have a lead come in, then someone does the qualification. And then there's a discovery. And the next part of the sales cycle, you can pretty much like shorten and say it's the sales portion. But let's break it down into demo, and POC, or POV, whatever you want to call it. Let's do this. POC. If anyone knows what POC or POV is, please put it in the comments. I'll share that in a minute if need be. So you have the demo, you have the POC, POV. That's part of the selling, right? We're showing the customer, after we understood what the problem is, that our product is the best product to solve your problem. And then what you have is the salesperson doing the proposal. And then the negotiation. Proof of concept, that's right. Do you know what proof of value is? Oh, I just said it. POV is proof of value. Negotiation. And if you close the deal, then you have implementation. Let's move these along here. Bam, bam. And post sales. Proof of value, yes, it is. I type slow. I don't type slow, but I type with many mistakes. So you're good. All right. Let's just be fancy and draw some arrows. And now, most of this is customer facing, as you can see. Right? But there's a lot of things that happen that are not written here, and that's the part I want to talk about today as well. And then post sales. So that's good. Any ideas? Like let's talk about the leads. Where do they come from? I mean, leads come from a few different places. You have marketing efforts. Let's write this, but let's do it much smaller. Okay, you have marketing. Right? Yeah, SDRs do cold calls, but where do they get the lists? Right? They get the lists from usually marketing. They might buy lists, but when you're talking about high tech companies, it's very likely it's from marketing activities. Like someone does a webinar, someone writes a white paper, and like Salesforce has a bunch. If you look at HubSpot has a bunch of white papers, or here's how you should do marketing, here's how you should do sales process and all that. So a lot of this comes from white papers, and then SDRs receive those leads and they start calling, or they can just buy a list. So marketing, we can, if you look at what marketing, we can talk about webinars, we can talk about content creation. You can talk about I always forget this word, not fairs, trade shows. So that's the first concept that I think about. What the first process here, we're still at the beginning, is SEs and marketing. Whether doesn't matter if you're a big company or a small company. Where does the SE fit in the marketing platform? Especially, it's very relevant in a startup that don't have a lot of people, don't have a lot of employees. SEs are great at marketing because if you think about it, so are you an SE right now, Scott? And I know somebody else is here too. So please introduce yourself. Thank you for coming. Let us know who you are. But SEs are great at telling stories. They're great at pulling stories out from customers, and then they're great at sharing. So the question now becomes: doesn't matter what the size of the company. What is the role of the SE in a start in the marketing world, right? No, sir, you want to be? Well, you're in the right spot, I guess. So maybe we can talk offline as well, if we haven't. Um, so let's do this. Like, again, there's multiple, like we can do webinars, we can do content. Usually SEs right now, as they're used in trade shows. They go and sit behind at a booth, and they just talk with anyone who shows up at their booth, which I don't think is the best use of their time because they could be doing a lot more intentional work. So I think SEs can create videos or just blogs. There are marketing people that do that, and I find SEs are just as good in that because they have personal stories. Like if you ever go to a trade show, you will see some like product marketing person there who was an engineer at some point and now looks at the product and tries to tell stories behind it. Then they take the stories that they shared or they received during that marketing event, and they write a blog about it. But SEs meet customers on a day-to-day basis. We have a million stories to share. So if you're a company, one process you need to think about is what is the role of the SE in the marketing. Right? If I were to have a startup, I would make each SE write at least one piece of content a month, right? Something that they've learned throughout that month. So that's something to think about, right? And then, so that's the first part. And then if you go through, so now you receive the lead, someone has to qualify it. It's usually an SDR or an account manager. Some SDRs are great, some account managers are great. But a lot of them, okay, Scott, I think I can help. Just let's connect offline as well, and we'll see how I can help. And hey, whoever's here, again, I guess I have to say that every 5 minutes. Thank you for being here. If you want to join Scott and share some information about you, I would be grateful. That way, I don't feel like I'm alone, and Scott doesn't feel like he's alone. And we're talking about the back end process versus the front end process, where the back end is anything that happens behind the scenes, which generally speaking, people don't talk about. And front end is everything that's customer facing. So we just talked about marketing. Now we're going to talk about qualification. So who does the qualification? We mentioned earlier SDRs and BDRs usually. And sometimes you have account managers or account executives that do it as well, depending on the company. Now, the way I've seen SDRs and BDRs work, they're great at like looking at the basics. Where do you have like, hey, do you want to talk? Are you interested in our product? But they can't ask their own questions to make sure that even though the customer is interested in our product, does our product from a base level even work for them? Okay. What are they using today? And I'm not expecting a lot of that, But generally speaking, after the SDR has a chat with the customer, the account executive, in theory, should have a chat with the SDR, BDR, and capture that information. And if they don't, they should then talk to the customer directly without inviting the SE, because we're still at the disqualification stage. The way I see it is, and that's another process, is at what point is a deal qualified? Right? And most companies do that well, and if they don't, usually the account executive do it well. And if they don't, usually the SEs do it well. So here's the second question that people should think about. At what point is a deal qualified? Thank you for inviting them, Scott. But this is something that usually is left to the SEs and the account managers, those who don't want to do a lot of chats. Now, the way I see SEs is, again, what is the role of the SE in the qualification? Generally speaking, most people would say nothing. I would disagree. SEs can work not necessarily on scripts, but on some basic questions that the SDRs, BDRs, and account managers can ask their customers, so that before the SE comes in, and that's what I've worked with on I worked with this on with multiple of SEs, whether they work at startups or work at larger companies, is if you have this, if you're asking the same questions to the account manager every time, then maybe you should just create a checklist and share that with them, and that will be your process. Hey, Mr. Customer, just read the checklist. Mr. Account Manager, Miss Account Manager, look at the checklist. Make sure that most of these questions are answered before you bring me into the thing, into the opportunity. Right? And I disagree with that, Scott. A deal is not qualified once it's handed over to the AE. The AE has to do their own qualification. It could be qualified in terms of there's customer interest, and depending on the skill of the SDR and BDR, they can figure out if they have like a budget, or if they have need or the authority to buy beyond just the simple qualification. But generally speaking, every time you jump on a call with a customer, you're kind of qualifying them in or out, but a little bit more deeply. And there are some things that SEs don't need to jump on the calls to make sure that they qualify the customer. So, for example, if a company sells firewall and they're talking to a customer who's interested in talking to them, they're okay in talking to them, but they already have a competitor's firewall. Currently, they're in the market for SIEM, which is a completely different product. Hey, Trevor. It's my pleasure. So here, let me put you so people know who I'm talking to. Boom. That's Trevor, and it is my pleasure, Scott. So I lost my trail of thought. That's the danger of brainstorming live. So where was I? Okay, let's have a drink. Figure this out. Okay, so the deal is qualified, and that's the question that you have to ask yourself. But that's not a pre-sales question. That's more of a sales process question. At what point is the deal qualified from a business perspective? When it comes to the SE, if the SE is busy, then they have to create their own process and make sure that it's technically qualified to an extent. Oh yeah, I was given an example of someone was in they're interested in talking to a firewall company, but they're in the market for a SIEM. There is no synergy, then there is no point in continuing that discussion. But this is more of a sales process. Yeah, I started. Yeah, so I'm gonna remove it. I'm just gonna move it to the side, and because it's a sales thing, not a SE thing specifically, so I'll just move it here. But SEs, so I'm gonna add my own What an SE or SE qualification process? Because I have a different process. Like, do we have checklists that we can share? Um, when do we get in, when do SEs get involved? But these are two things involved. These are two things to think about when someone's doing the qualification. Now, before we even jump on discovery, there's the process of like, that we want to talk about is opportunity assignment. In case you weren't aware, there are different models for SEs to get involved in deals. There are SEs that are tied to salespeople, specific salespeople. It could be one, two, three. The most I've heard is 10, but that's a little bit overkill. The best is 1-to-1, obviously. You have one SE covering one account manager. So whatever that account manager needs, the SE is there to help. Um, but there's also the pooled model. So the pooled model is when you have a bunch of SEs not assigned to any specific salespeople or accounts or anything, but when a salesperson needs an SE, they reach out to the sales engineer manager, or they can go through whatever software, Salesforce, Jira, and request for an SE to jump on and be assigned to an opportunity. So again, if you're a company, then you need to figure that out, like which one do you want. And if you're an SE looking for a job, it would be good for you to understand what model that company uses, because it affects the way you operate. If you're tied to salespeople, and that's a whole nother video that we can create, but if you're tied to salespeople, let's say 1-to-1, even 1-to-2, you're supporting these two salespeople. You're building a relationship with these two salespeople. Not only that, you're building a relationship with the customers that these two salespeople serve, because they are your customers. But when you're in a pooled model, day one you can be working with customer A, and day 5 you can be working with customer Z, right? And never talk to customer A again if they close the deal. So as you can see, this is not customer facing, like the marketing. Well, the marketing is done in the back end, but the result is customer facing. Let's just put it that way. The qualification questions, we're not meeting customers to qualify. We're just helping the salespeople qualify. Then we have the opportunity assignment. Still, we're not meeting with the customers. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat so I can answer them. So you have the opportunity assignment, whether it's tied to salespeople or pooled, and like how is it assigned? Is it through email, which is usually the easiest way to do it? Is it through Salesforce, through Jira, whatever? Okay, and then the fourth thing that we need to consider for SE involvement. At what time does the SE get involved? And I'm talking about this right before discovery, because I believe SEs should be involved in any deal right before discovery, at discovery. Many other companies get the SE involved at the demo stage. And I don't particularly like that, because there's a lot of information that we gather during the discovery phase. I've been burned by the account managers whenever I jump on a demo without being part of the discovery with wrong information. So I think the SE should be involved in the discovery stage. So that's the fourth process that we kind of need to think about. And then, like, sometimes before we get here, like, we jump the gun from the lead and we get a RFP, which is known as the things that SEs hate. Now, here's the question to you. What do you think should be an RFP process? Like, when I say RFP process, what do you think about? So, Scott, Trevor, if you're still on, Scott, if you're still on, let me know what you think. By the way, RFPs are requests for proposals. Usually, the whenever there's an RFP, the common thought by the salesperson, at least, is, oh my god, we need to respond to them today, especially if it's Friday afternoon when you get it. Now, if you're a big company, honestly, no clue. That's an honest answer. I appreciate that. Um, so that's generally the response. Like, a salesperson or a sales team, whoever gets an RFP request, usually it might come to then SDR, BDR, who then forwards it to the team. Salespeople's like, we need to respond to this now because they're worried about it. So you're asking what information we want to gather from the client. No, I'm asking what the reaction would be. Well, it's the request for proposal is the client is sending the vendor saying, hey, I need information about this. Or request for information, request for proposal, RFP, RFI, where they say, generally speaking, they have it's a spreadsheet with a million things, like, we need this feature, this feature, this feature, this feature. By the way, Trevor and Scott, tell me where, like, I know Scott, you mentioned you're a careerist, or you're taking course careers. Where are you today? So I can provide examples that are useful to you. And Trevor as well. Not necessarily. Price is not included in the RFP. Sometimes it could be, but it doesn't always have to be. It's usually feature driven. Right? Like, for example, you're going to buy a car. Imagine you send an RFP to the car dealer. You're looking for Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. You're in cybersecurity. Okay, so let's say for firewalls, they're looking for 400 gig, right? Which is something that's coming out. Or they're looking for SSL TLS 1.3, which most companies have. But basically, they're saying, hey, these are the features we're requesting. So tell me more about your features. Right? And in many cases, these are valid. In some cases, these are used by companies. You're a manager for a kidney specialist. I have so many questions for you right now. But we'll hold that thought. We'll come back to that. But okay, I don't know how I can provide examples specific to you. I'll figure that out. But basically, you're asking, like, hey, these are the features we're looking for. Generally speaking, when you're talking about an RFP, sometimes a competitor comes in early and helps the customer build an RFP, and the customer wants to build it in such a way because they know they want that specific vendor, but they have to send out RFPs to other vendors to conform to their mandates of requesting at least 3 RFPs, right? Or or what they're asking for is outside the realm of reality, etc. So the question is, what is the process when you receive an RFP? One, do you have a team to do this? Not who does it. Usually the SE. Like I hate to break it to you, but the SEs tend to do RFPs. And the last question I have here: what are the criteria to respond to an RFP? Like for me personally, I don't want to respond to every RFP that comes in because sometimes I feel like I am used as what is called column fodder, as in I'm the one they're asking as the third vendor just to make sure they comply. I am glad you understand that. By the way, if anyone's wondering what I was talking about, Scott is a kidney specialist or a manager for a kidney specialist. I don't think you build kidneys from scratch, but maybe you help people with kidneys. I don't think we're going to finish today, the brainstorming session. So maybe we'll do another one. What is the timeline for what? So Scott is asking, what is the timeline like for responding to an RFP? If that's the question, it depends on the customer. A lot of time, we've had situations where we get an RFP on Friday at 3 in the afternoon asking for a response by 5 p.m. So it really varies. Most of them are urgent all of a sudden for some reason. But if I've worked with customers and I've helped build their RFP, and I have had ample time to actually respond to it because I built it, and that usually worked out very well for me. The product implemented. We don't know when it comes to an RFP. They don't usually have a timeline. They're very secretive. So here's the thing. That's what I'm saying. If you get a request for RFP, and don't be sorry, I'm glad you clarified. You sound Canadian. I can say that because I'm Canadian. But basically, the RFP comes in. We don't know when they want to do anything. So is the process to just simply respond? Is the process to try to get them on a call? And it doesn't have to be the same thing every time. The more you do something the same way, the more often you do it, the better. But something you just can't control everything. But having a process in mind so that like method or like what's it called in the military? What do they call it? The standard operating procedure. So that when you need to deviate, at least you know why. You have a reason to do it, and you might get burned. Right? So there's that. And then you have when it comes to the discovery process, something else we want to add here is what's the research like? The research process. Where do you look for information? Man, I have to share this. Just a country boy from Kentucky. Oh, that's an emoji that's showing his face blue smiling. Okay. I thought you were saying that about yourself. So consider me a city boy. Well, just okay. Well, I don't know what to say to that. I'm from Ottawa, so I apologize a lot, I guess. I'm glad I'm getting to know you a little bit better. So your research, where do you look for information? What information do you need? Like for example, for me, if I'm meeting a customer for the first time, I'm in test and measurement. So that means I sell equipment to testers, who are usually known as quality assurance or product verification. If I'm going to meet someone for the first time, what is the research I'm going to look for? Well, my procedure that I built for myself, and I'm talking about this as if it's someone else that needs to build it from you. It would be great if companies build this, but most companies will not. They should, they won't. So, what processes are you going to build for yourself once you get the job? And if you're looking for a job, what are the processes you're going to build for yourself to find a job? Something similar to this. So, the research. I go look on LinkedIn. I know the people I'm going to meet. They're on the invite. I go look at them on LinkedIn, see what they're interested in, see what they post. In quality assurance and and the product verification, they don't post that much, so there isn't much to see. So what I do is go on their website and look for jobs in the area of the people I'm meeting for product verification engineers and software engineers and quality assurance engineers, and see what the job description is. Because when I see the job description, I know what they care about, and that helps me when I need to ask them questions. And speaking of asking questions, that brings me to my next topic. Before we even go into discovery, what is the transfer of information procedure? Or education, let's call it education procedure. Product to sales, SEs to other SEs. Basically, what I'm saying here is every month, every 2 months, there's a new feature coming out for the product that the company sells. How, if you're at a startup, if I don't know if Scott, I imagine the kidney specialist is kind of the CEO of his or her company. They need to answer all the questions. They need to be involved in every aspect of discussions with patients, which is fair. It's about health, it's not about technology. But let's say it was technology, and he was able to transfer, or she was able to transfer that information to you. Would it be beneficial to them so they can go do something else, and you can help the client understand what they're going to go through, how to make a decision? And it's the same thing at a startup. At a startup, the CEO, the founder, is doing almost everything. They're doing the sales part, they're doing the product, they know everything. But if they're scaling up a little bit, now what? If they hire their first salesperson, who's going to transfer that information to the salesperson? I've been on calls with startup founders and their salespeople, and the salesperson pretty much can't say much because the startup founder is there and they know everything. They're doing all the talking. So why do you have a salesperson? The whole point of having a salesperson is so that the founder can do something else. And when we're talking about larger organization, if there's not good enough transfer of information from the product team, so product managers, otherwise known as PLMs, product line managers, whoever builds the product, and the sales team is going to invite the product team onto every call. So what is the education procedure? Even if it's a discovery call, they're going to be invited to that. So how can the sales team, how can the product marketing team transfer that information to the sales team? And also, if you're looking at, like, Trevor, you're working in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has a million different products, and even within one company, I don't know, some firewall company, Palo Alto, they have a lot of different products that they need to sell. Some SEs are going to be great at one. Oh, let's take Cisco, for example. Cisco has firewalls, has routers, has switches, has WebEx. They have a million things, right? Not one SE is going to know all that, but some SEs are going to be great at some, and you're going to split the work, split the load. That's another procedure to think about. Who's going to learn what? But then how are they going to share that information together? How are they going to share stories? Right? Because if I'm working with, let's say, a bank, I'm selling Cisco firewalls to a bank in Ottawa, and I have a success story. How is an SE in Kentucky Hopefully not Confluence. That just hit me hard. Uh, so how is an SE in Kentucky going to be able to share that story with their customer and help them understand how we can solve their problem? And okay, so we're still not even at discovery. There's still a lot more to go through. So I'm just gonna pause here. I'll end it here for today. Maybe we'll do another one on Thursday night. How about that? And we'll go through that. So please come back if you're interested. If this is useful to you, um, I'll I'll how about I go through some of the but there aren't that many questions in the chat. There's a lot of comments, which I truly appreciate. I appreciate the interactiveness here. So thank you for this. If this has been useful, please make sure to like and let me know. That works for you. Good. I'm happy to hear that. See you Thursday night then. And that's it. I'll wait a couple minutes if you have any questions. Do you have any questions? Which is something I teach most people not to ask, but this is weird because this is a LinkedIn Live, not a live demo. All right. Cool, Trevor. I mean, if you can't show up live, you can always watch the replays as well. All right. We'll end here. It's 8 o'clock. Go to sleep. I'm actually going to sleep. Sounds good, Scott. I appreciate that. Take care.